at this point?
Around the fund balance right now is $479,500.
Because if we're going to cut out fines ongoing, this is going to be a drain on the fund balance, so.
Well,
Yeah.
Ald has some information from the county I'll let him add that we will be covered one way or the other.
Would
Yeah.
Mr. Auld or Mr. Grant like to comment on that?
Yeah, I will. Actually, we have in total fund balance as of June 30th, we had like $1.8 million. We realized $1.1 million as of June 30th. So this year, to allude to what Barbara said, we have in our budget for this fiscal year about $479,000 in fund balance, which you will see, which I will present. As you mentioned, Ms. Beck, in order to cover some of those increases and the elimination of fines, then we would have to use approximately $877,000 of fund balance. But I'll show you as I go through my reporting.
Let me just add to that with the ability to cover the loss of overdue fines in this fiscal year and next, the county executive and his office have said that they will cover it in future years. So they're gonna make us whole for all future years. And they agree with, if the board decides to eliminate overdue fines, they agree with that. So I will turn it back over to Mr. Grant. And Ms. Beck, does that answer your questions?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can everyone see the screen that's being shared now?
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, first of all, I just want to go as Ms. Maxwell mentioned, I'm going to run through our statement of revenues and fund balance as of December 31st. As she mentioned, there's no major variances within this report other than the items that we all are aware of, the fines that we've collected, the collection services. All of these numbers relate to our COVID situation. But our main number of all of our funds, we're still at 50% of our particular revenues, and then that's where we should be at this particular time. If we go to our expenditure pages, again, we're still within budget for all of our expenditures as of December 31st. We're actually, with encumbrances, we're realizing at about 54%. Without the expected amount, we're at about 48%. Still no major items here that would cause you any concern. I think that we're doing pretty good fiscally as of December 31st. These are some of our smaller items, our smaller miscellaneous donations, and our staff development grant. So no major items there also. All right, getting into what we are proposing for fiscal year 2021 on the revenue side. You notice our budget for fiscal year 21 was $28,691,600, but we are proposing for, and I need to change some of these. I'll go back and change some of these columns. This should be fiscal year 2022 proposed operating budget. So what we have here is our particular base budget here from the county, which is $24,139,000, which is a decrease of about $402,000. This amount here, which was in fiscal year 21, had to do with that one-time bonus, as Ms. Maxwell mentioned, that was realized within fiscal year 21, we were asked to extract those particular costs to come up with a baseline for our fiscal year 22 budget. So we were able to do that. Most other items stayed the same on the revenue side. Here's the fines line item that we've been talking about. So we eliminated our fines of $220,000. We did some adjustments in our public printing just to right size it based on what's been happening in not this fiscal year, but previous years. We also did that with collection services. We also eliminated the meeting room rentals. I think that this item was brought to the board's attention last month, and Kathy will go into more detail concerning this item. With these reductions that we've mentioned, we are going to ask for to spend within our fund balance $877.388 here. So even though overall we are requesting less, as you see 207,790, a lot of that has to do with the reduction of the 402,000, which was that one-time bonus that we had within this particular fiscal year. So if I move to the expenditure side, all of the major items that affect this particular budget for fiscal year 22 has to do with our salary and wages. Again, even though it looks like a reduction because we took out that particular bonus that I mentioned on revenue side, we actually did have some increases in our salary line item that was due to the executive leadership team salaries being bumped up within this particular fiscal year. So those changes are within there. Slight changes, if you notice in FICA and our FICA special pays. We try to maintain and keep everything pretty much at the same level as our previous year budget in terms of our equipment, our real estate rentals, our phone service, all of those particular line items, we tried to maintain at the same level. Did have some changes in IT, and these were zero effect changes. I mean, we just moved things out of one line item into another. There's a hardware contract that is no longer realized for this particular year, and some of those dollars you see switched out to 92,000, and we put some of those dollars within our software line item for additional purchases there. And we also were able to take out some $20,000 out of our furniture and fixtures line item. So the net effect of all of those are zero. So, and if you look at all of our other line items, I'll go up a little bit. Our supplies and materials line item, we held everything pretty much the same for those line items, business and travel, and all of the other line items. So we're still at a balanced budget here for total expenditures of $28.4 million. And again, they asked us to be very conservative on the particular line item. So we feel that this is a conservative budget, and then we'll start the process with our budget analysts in going through all of the fine details of all the particular line items. Does anyone have any questions on
Yes.
the
Ms. Beck?
Yes, and this question may be more directed at Skip or the chairman of the budget committee, but I'm curious as to why the 24,900 for the different website, why that wasn't put in the original budget submission rather than asking the foundation to pay for it.
So actually, I think that may be a question for Rudy Rodella. This, I think the basics on this, Ms. Beck, are that for us to put, we could
Let me-
put it into
Let
the
me jump in,
base-
Skip, if I may.
we need to go over to the supplemental budget, but let me defer to Mr. Rodella.
We had the 24-9 had been a supplemental that we had requested for FY20. But as you recall, all of the supplementals were not approved because of
Right.
the
I
because of the
understand
COVID
that.
impact.
I understand no supplementals are going anywhere. I got that part. But
Right.
why wasn't it put into the original budget submission is my question.
It really cannot go into the, if you're talking about the base budget, it can't
Yeah.
just be put into that.
Well, when the budget was prepared, certainly it could have been, could it not?
No, it went in as a supplemental in 20 and it wasn't approved. So that additional amount is not in the baseline budget right now. When we can't go above the baseline. That's the level of effort that the county's funding.
And
us
so
at.
you could not add anything to last year's budget. what
That
you're
is
telling me.
correct.
Yes,
That is
that's correct. That's
Right.
correct. They're asking us to not add anything to the baseline budget from last year, given the financial situation throughout this year and what they suspect is going to roll into next year. Yeah, that's correct.
And that's the basic constraint that we're working with is that if we guess wrong at an expense, we are kind of stuck because we can't increase the amount that we're authorized to spend, and we're already a year behind in funding that particular line item. So that's one of the challenges that we have to work with the current funding model.
Any other questions on the proposed operating budget? I can move to the supplemental budget.
And also just please keep in mind that we also have to get to a few other items on here, especially within the treasurer's report for the supplemental budget, Mr. Grant. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, very quickly, this is our request. Again, we went into detail with this through our finance committee. These are, as we've been saying, our cybersecurity has been our major emphasis, and we want that to be a priority. Skip will, I believe Skip already sent out an email concerning the counties, as he already mentioned before, the counties working with us in eliminating the overdue fines, and they'll be able to help us in future years to get this funded back. So I was able to eliminate that amount, and we have a lot of other IT items, carpet cleaning services, and things like that. I don't know what level of detail you want for this particular line item, but any questions you have, we can answer those now.
Are there any questions?
Okay, very good.
Does that conclude your proposal, Mr. Grant?
Yes, it does, Chairman.
Ms. Maxwell, does that conclude the operating budget request?
Yes, it does.
Okay, with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the operating budget request.
I so move.
Ms. Miller moves. Is there I'm sorry, since this is a committee action, we don't need to do that. I'm sorry. Since this is coming from the budget committee, we can vote from it because it's a committee report. So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, motion carries. Now, moving on to eliminating overdue fines. Ms. Maxwell, would you like to present what the committee came up with?
Yes, as I stated earlier, the committee came up with the with the overdue fines that it's supported the overdue fines, but as you understand, they're not going to be in the supplemental budget. They're going to be covered outside of the supplemental budget within our baseline budget. We were able to cover it this year. Next year, we can use fund balance, and outlying years, the county has agreed to fund it, to help. They said that they would fund it. They would support it.
Thank you. Are there any questions regarding eliminating overdue fines?
Mr. Shorter, I would like to just make a couple of comments about this.
All right.
So we've had a lot of discussions over the past couple of years, and last year the board voted to eliminate fines on overdue children's and teen materials. What we're seeking today is for you to support completely and permanently eliminating overdue fines. I've given a fair amount of background through emails to the board. The prime reason to do this is to bring a lot of users back into the library system, and I'd just like to give you some sense of the scale of this. We have approximately 38,000 people who have overdue fines, and we will bring pretty much all of them back to the library by eliminating their fines. We are not proposing to eliminate their charges for lost or damaged materials. We have a process and a procedure that we use in order to wipe clean those items after a couple of years. It's actually 4 years right now, but that is something that's done just to keep our database clean, and it's essentially a write-off every year of what you could call bad debt. So we're very much interested in doing this. Oh, I think one other point to make is that there's quite a large amount of staff time that is spent in handling the collection of overdue fines, the bank deposits, and so on. So by eliminating overdue fines, we wouldn't completely eliminate that staff work, but it probably knocks it down by about 75 or 80%. So we calculated that there's about I think it was around $340,000 worth of staff time spent on just collection of fines and deposits and so on. So we would knock that way down and be able to free up staff to handle other duties, which is something that's been happening over time. So with that, I would seek a motion to eliminate overdue fines.
Is there a motion to approve it? Ms. Miller motions. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Felicia seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Is there discussion?
Yes. Yes, I just have a question about that. So what then, I guess, motivates people to bring books back if there's no charge for late fees?
So people generally just want to continue using the library. They want to bring books back and check out more books, so they bring them back. You know, the late fees are not the prime motivator. And frankly, when no one else wants an item, you know, in other words, when there's not a demand to get a book or DVD or something like that, it's not a problem for them to have it in their home. Maybe other family members are using it.
I'm sorry. Can everyone please mute themselves? I'm hearing a lot of feedback on my end. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the other thing to keep in mind is that if they keep them out to the end of their renewal times, then we're going to charge them, and we're going to change it over from being overdue to being a lost item, and they're going to have to bring it in. They're going to be charged for the lost item. They would be able to get that overdue fine wiped clean once they bring it back in, and it's no longer lost. So those are the reasons people would bring them back.
Yeah, it's not that I don't support it. I just remember taking my kids to the library and there being certain books that, you know, all of us moms wanted to read with our kids. And one of the things that we looked forward to is the deadline that the person before us had
Right.
to bring the book
Yeah.
back, and that
The
motivation.
yeah, exactly.
So I don't know. I just wanted to ask the question. It's not that I don't support it. I just wanted to bring that up.
So if you,
Real briefly, Mr. Ald, by the way, we have other business to attend to.
I may have answered that already. I think the point is that motivation is still there, especially if you place a reserve on it, you know, then the person cannot check it out any longer. They have to return it. And also, you should keep in mind that books that are really popular, especially children's picture books that are really popular, we buy many, many copies of those, and we have a formula by which we buy multiple copies based on the number of people that have placed it on hold.
Are there any other questions or any points of discussion regarding this? The question before the body? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? I see one abstention.
I'm going to
Motion
join
carries.
Joan. I'm abstaining as well.
2 abstentions. Okay, thank you. So the vote is, I'm sorry, just make sure we have an accurate count. Donna, can you please help me out with this?
Hi, I only see 2 abstentions and I recorded the names.
Okay, so what's the final vote? Is it?
Oh, I don't have the final vote. I don't have a number of people here.
Can we get that real quick just for official record keeping purposes, please?
Can count that from the list of participants. I'll get that to you shortly.
Okay. And if it's all right with everyone, we'll just move on, and then we'll just come back with the official vote, just so we have something in the official record saying what our official vote was, but there was enough votes for the people present. So moving on to our foundation report, Ms. Beck and Ms. Miller.
Joyce, shall I start off?
Yeah, why don't you read the first
Okay.
3 and I'll do the second 3?
Okay. The foundation reports that their fundraising continues to be positive. Year-to-date gifts over 140,000 with 477 donors. So I think they're moving along. They would ask that they would very much like to get 100% participation from the Board of Trustees itself. In other words, they're asking each of us on the Board of Trustees to make whatever donation they can, so they have 100% participation, which is important when you go to shop your product around. The next fundraising campaign is going to be the $100 for 100 years, which is an interesting campaign that's going forward. And with each $100, you will receive a listed name on a special anniversary donor wall at your chosen library. So you'll get your name up there in the local library if you'd like to do this. And they're expecting something in the neighborhood of 2,400 donors. They're hoping it'll be another brick campaign, which certainly was oversubscribed. And of course, they're going to include all of that information in the next copy of Happenings. And as far as the library's web migration project, the foundation did vote to approve it at their board with a grant of approximately $30,000. This anniversary funding supports banners, the history walk, anniversary videos, and various programs. And of course, they were also the funders of the mailing of the Happenings, which is really historic, I think, for the library because it's our best tool publicly. Joyce?
Okay. Over the next year, the Governance Committee will be creating a list of interested community members who would like to serve on the Foundation Board of Directors. They're looking for members who live in county districts 1 through 4 to broaden the geographic membership. So if you know somebody who would like to serve on the foundation, please contact Kathleen Sparrow, our director. In December, the Stewardship Committee held a thankathon, making hundreds of phone calls to thank our donors for supporting the library. All donors were positive about contributing to the library and pleased to help to make the libraries better. In closing, I'd like to share our foundation mission moment with a quote from a library customer that demonstrates the impact that private donations have on library services and programs. Quote, "I am so thankful that the Crofton Library is open during this challenging time of COVID-19. The library staff is going above and beyond to safely keep materials available to the public. I especially am thankful for their weekly grab and go craft projects. I am homeschooling 6 preschool grandchildren. The craft projects are greatly appreciated and loved by the children. What a wonderful help they have been to me. Thanks so much." The grab and go craft projects are funded through community donations to the foundation. We're pleased to be able to support some projects like this that make a difference in the lives of our neighbors. And the last thing that I want to mention is that at the foundation meeting, I asked how our trustees were contributing, how they were coming along. And we're pleased to announce that we have 75% trustee participation in donations. Trustees have donated through memorial giving to the Beyond Your Expectations campaign, general unrestricted giving, or the year-end annual fund giving. So, and several have indicated that they are going to be giving soon and have made a verbal pledge to. So on behalf of my representation to the foundation, I'd like to thank our board members for their contribution to the foundation. It's really important to do, as Joan mentioned. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Some donors have not been thanked at all or had any acknowledgement of ongoing gifts.
Hi, Penny. It's good to see you. I was talking with Kathleen about that very matter that you brought to my attention recently, and she was trying to get in touch with you and has not been able to connect. So,
I've been available.
okay. And so I tried to call you this afternoon and she left you a voice message. So, okay. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Beck and Ms. Miller, for that report. And thank you for keeping us updated and for your involvement. Also, so everyone knows, for the eliminating overdue fines, it did pass this body with a vote of 15-0 to 2. So everyone knows. So 15-0-2. With that, there are no staff reports. So Skip, I'm going to give you the challenge of giving your CEO report in 2 minutes. That's the challenge of the day, in 2 minutes.
I should be able to do that. So really, I just want to point out the save the date items at the bottom of the agenda because there's several things related to budget presentations, and I invite all trustees to join us for those presentations. Please let Donna know if you would like to attend any of those. We also are having staff managers report at the budget town hall. So if you have a chance to tune into any of the budget town halls, do so. With your adoption of today's budget and supplemental requests, we will fold that into our presentations. So that concludes my report, but I am available for any questions that anybody might have.
Skip, may I say you superseded my expectations with the 2-minute challenge. So kudos to you. Does anyone have any questions for the CEO? Hearing
Yeah.
none. Oh, Miss Beck.
Just one brief thing. What are our plans for opening going forward? Do we have any changes coming or?
Let me let you, yeah, thank you for asking that, Joan. We're in a holding pattern right now, waiting to see if this COVID surge will subside. If it does, that'll cue us to reopen for appointments. We need to see numbers dropping before we have that comfort level to go back to reopening for appointments. In addition, we've been pressing the county and the county health department to try to get library employees, primarily our branch staff, to be able to get vaccines earlier than the general population. We certainly think of ourselves as educators. However, we were not classified with the teachers and childcare workers to be able to get vaccines at the same time as teachers and childcare workers. Pretty much every day now, I'm getting communications from the county and the county health department about this. If we can get our branch staff vaccinated in a quick way, as soon as that happens, we would be able to open on a much broader front. So we're very anxious to do this.
Yes.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? Hearing none, thank you very much. And moving on to new business, what I'd like to do is a consent item for both issues. I don't think that they're too controversial. However, if any member disagrees with me, we can vote on them one at a time. But for the interest of time, I'm going to turn it over to Skip to briefly go over both of them. We were familiar with them, and then we'll vote on them in one swift vote. So Skip.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So on the meeting room policy that Ms. Hollerback brought to you last month, she went over everything pretty well. We aren't bringing in any meeting room revenue this year, so this is a budget affected item as well. It was $20,000 that we budgeted for. Again, Mr. Grant was able to use fund balance toward not having any revenue projected for next year, and that would be eliminated in future years as well. The reason for the policy is we feel that we can continue to work with even if our partners are for profit, they can still use the meeting room, but we would eliminate the use of the meeting room to kind of reduce the competition for the meeting room. So that's the reason for wanting to make this change. It goes along with the way Howard County and some other libraries are handling meeting rooms. It's a change we would like to make now. The second item is a simple reclassification of a circulation assistant position that's currently at Riviera Beach to make it a library associate position at Broadneck. Again, this is another effort to make the best use of those positions that we have. That's what I wanted to say. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Hearing none, I will entertain a motion for us to vote on the meeting room policy and reclassification authorization. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Esatt moved. Is there a second?
A second.
Ms. Miller seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, both items are unanimously approved. Now, I think the fun part of the agenda is that I have the opportunity of turning the mic over to Miss Maureen Sullivan, who has, oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Maureen, oh, Miss Maureen Sullivan, correct? Okay, I will rather make sure I get the title right than anything else. So you should have let me go on with doctor. It would have been more fun.
I should tell you, Will, you're in good company. The University of Maryland Alumni Office persists in calling me doctor, and I'm not, but it's a nice appellation every now and again. So I have this opportunity with you this afternoon to introduce my report to make sure that we spend this time in a way that you understand the report, so that after this presentation, you as the board will be able to go forward under Will's guidance to review carefully and consider what you're going to do with the recommendations. This work has been a real source of pleasure for me. I was a user of the Anne Arundel County Library System during the 20 years that I lived in Annapolis. That was from 1996 to 2017, when I left to move back to Connecticut to be with my husband in retirement. So my approach to this work has consistently been one in which I believe deeply that the voice of the individuals in the organization is the most important source for ideas about how to improve the organization. And for that reason, I designed and administered the confidential inquiries to you, the members of the board. We did a variation for the members of the board of the foundation. The executive leadership team had the opportunity to complete a form, as did the members of the strategic planning working group. And some of you know this, but I'll remind everybody that I also was someone who worked with Margaret Sullivan when she did the consulting several years ago. So I've also had the opportunity to get to know the organization from that perspective. I read very carefully all of the inquiries that were submitted to me. And I think for most of them, I actually did a third reading, because they were rich with specific suggestions as well as some general ideas, all focused on how to strengthen the Anne Arundel County Public Library. And from my perspective, in addition to what I said in the opening paragraph of the report, I think it's really important for you, the members of the board, to understand that people responding to the inquiry took this work very seriously. Several of them provided responses that went on for more than 3 or 4 pages. And it was daunting at first to go through and be able to synthesize the set of ideas and the information that was provided, but that was my responsibility. So I undertook that and spent quite a bit of time, as I've already indicated, 3 passes through all of them, and then stepped back to give some thought to what is it that I'm learning here, and how can I take what I'm learning from these different voices and pull this together into a set of recommendations. And my goal was to really position you, the board, and then Skip and his leadership team to be able to go forward and act on these recommendations. And particularly for you to have a set that, from my perspective, you can work with going forward. And I would be the first to say that probably as you deliberate in future meetings about some of what I've suggested, you may not adopt everything that I've suggested. But I do want you to know that I made my best effort to present to you a set of recommendations that, at least from my perspective, will advance the work that is there for you to do going forward. I also benefited from very good guidance from Skip and Will, particularly as I was structuring the process, the confidential inquiries, and also as I was facing some questions about how to handle different things that came up in the process. But it is especially important to Will that I stress to all of you, the recommendations are mine, And they come from my careful review and consideration. And of course, the other thing that influenced my thinking is I do a considerable amount of work in the library field, helping libraries become more effective as organizations. And in order for me to do that work well, I not only have to see what is working, where are there promising practices in libraries, but also I have to monitor what research into effective organizations, effective boards of governance tells us would be important practices. So all of that came together as I was actually writing this report. So I will pause there, and I have two questions that I want to ask of you. The first one is there anything beyond what I've already said that you would like to know? Is there something about the process, about me, that I have not addressed and it frames a question for you? And then the second question, once we've addressed that one, is I want to invite you to let me know if there is any aspect of this that requires clarification. And once I've managed those two parts of our work with you, Will then is going to assume the role of facilitating a conversation about the recommendations themselves. So Will, I hope I have set this up in accordance with what you were expecting. Good, okay. So,
Yeah.
So do any of you have questions for clarification? Anything you didn't see that you could clearly or that you saw that you couldn't clearly understand?
I just wanted to make a comment in terms of echoing your credentials that for several years I have seen the results of your work, including at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and also your being at the Harvard Leadership Institute also demonstrates your strengths. Thank you.
This is why you have such a special place in my heart, Simona. Thank you.
She didn't pay me to say that.
Maureen, would you like me to share my screen showing your report so everybody has that in front of them?
Let's ask the members of the board. I was presuming, since you have the report ahead and it's fairly brief, that we wouldn't need to do that, but let me check in. That's a nice offer, Skip. Would that be helpful to any of you? Okay.
Members, that's up to you guys. And this is honestly your chance to ask Maureen any clarifying questions about the recommendations that she sent to us. I know they were far-reaching, and I know this is the beginning of the conversation, but this is our opportunity to really ask Maureen and to really pluck her brain a little bit. She gave you her methodology. Now it's our opportunity to ask her a little bit more about the recommendations. Any follow-up questions, any comments is welcomed here. This is supposed to be a conversation about the recommendations.
So one piece that we might look at in a focused way is the set of recommendations around improving governance, and there are 6 of them. So I would just invite you to focus there for a few minutes and let me know if there's anything here particularly that you want to hear more about which you want to hear more. So I have a practice of counting silently in my head when a question's been posed. I'm a strong extrovert, and I've had a number of colleagues tell me that I have to be more disciplined in waiting. So I did that, and I got up to 12, which is usually the target number for me to conclude that maybe we're ready to move on. Was there anything about this that any of you would want to share a response about it with me or say to your colleagues? I appreciate Penny nodding her head.
Is there anything that anyone will agree or disagree with? And we don't have to go into a deep conversation about this. Like I said, this is the beginning of a process. We're not accepting or denying any recommendations, but first impressions, is there anything that, that struck out to you as a trustee looking at the governance section? What did you think about this? Anyone? I will start going in seniority on the board.
This is Mrs. Ellis. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, Miss Ellis, how are you?
I'm fine. I'm sorry. We're going through some medical issues in my family. At this time, I need a little more processing time. That's why I'm remaining silent, because we are facing some medical issues in my family that are very pressing. So I need a little more processing time. And do we have, since this will be the first time that we'll discuss it as a body, and sometimes presenting to a whole group is a little intimidating, do we have the option, if we really feel compelled, to contact her specifically, or is that unwarranted, or should we just wait or for me personally, wait until our next meeting to ask direct questions? Right now, I'm just a little overwhelmed personally.
First off, Miss Ellis, I will always encourage you and all members. I hope everything is well on your end, but please do not feel the need to stay around at this meeting. If you have a pressing family issue, and that's for anyone, please attend to that. Also, like I said, this is the beginning of a conversation. So here, Miss Sullivan is presenting her recommendations. Over the course of the next few meetings, we will talk about how we want to implement and accept her recommendations and go forward. So this is going to be a year and a half project, because these recommendations are, like you said, it can be very overwhelming to look at. It was very overwhelming for myself. So this is going to be something that we're going to talk about a lot over the course of the year and a half. So this is not going to be one conversation here, then we're going to move on to something else. This is going to be an ongoing conversation for us as a group, and maybe we'll break it down to smaller groups to have who are more specialized in certain areas to really have, so we can dive in. This is just an opportunity to really talk to Maureen, because when we recruited Maureen, this is where kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Sullivan, this is where, it ends with Miss Sullivan. I know she's not unavailable for everyone, but she is, this is the next phase that we're transitioning into. And Miss Anderson has a question.
Yes. So I have my own busyness and whatever. And I don't know if everyone else is just not saying anything, but I would personally appreciate a little more time to digest and maybe to hear right now just a kind of quick summary of the 6 suggestions, or at least to start there. I know that I'm like catching up on a whole bunch of stuff, just completely swamped. So maybe we could take a step back.
Yeah. So maybe let's do it like this so we can see the whole picture, so we're not too bogged down into the nitty gritty, so we're not too overwhelmed. Ms. Sullivan, why won't you do this? Go over basically the common themes of each section so everyone has a little bit of a backdrop, nothing too in-depth. And so that after this meeting, they can go back, review everything. So once we come back together for our next meeting, everyone can feel more comfortable to have a more substantive conversation. Does that sound good to everyone?
Will, can I say something?
Yes, Ms. Miller.
Yes.
I read the report probably twice, and The reason why I didn't say anything is because it's very substantive, and it poses so many challenges that I don't even know where to begin. Like for example, fleshing out the roles that we all have and defining them. That's a big task to do. Diversity among the staff and whatnot, and that's a big, how do we go from one point A to point B? The bylaws, the decision-making processes that we do, defining a path for that. I just find that it gives us so much to think about, and so much in the way of discussing as a whole group, that it's hard to wrap my head around all of it. It's just very overwhelming what we really need to do, in my opinion. That's why I didn't say anything, because I find it's all of this is very daunting to accomplish, and that we have to figure out how we're going to do this and how we're going to accomplish the goals that Maureen has set out for us. And there are things that need to be done, for sure. Absolutely. So that's why I didn't say anything, because I don't even know where to begin to say what, in terms of what we need to do about accomplishing these items.
No, thank you for that. And I think, and like I said, this is going to be a year and a half project. This is not going to be solved within a few meetings, because if not, we're going to be on a Zoom call for many of hours, and still we won't be able to do it right. And for anyone, especially for those who have saw this library system transition over the years, transition doesn't happen overnight. So, and these recommendations are very substantive and very systemic across the board. So we will always take a step back as we work across all this, and we'll make sure that we are very intentional on how we do this. So going back to Ms. Anderson's point, does anyone else have any questions or comments? Hearing none, would you like to respond to what Ms. Anderson said, Ms. Sullivan, or what Ms. Miller said?
I would. I'd be very happy, Will, to go through and give an overview of each of the 4 sections. But I also want to say to you, I am a librarian as well as a consultant. And my work since 1991 in this field has focused on helping libraries become the best that they can be. And the way that represents itself in my consulting practice is it's very much the case that once I've completed a project, and that will be the case after 5:30 today, I still am happy to be available if questions should come up. I take Ms. Anderson's point, and also yours, Ms. Miller, very seriously, because there is a lot here to absorb. And as you're reading, you're thinking about, how does this relate to your experience, the meaning that you found in the work, not just of the board, the governance piece, but the other pieces as well. So just know that you will be free to call upon me if I can be helpful going forward. The shorthand way to put this is, I'm invested in the success of this work already. And it's a source of pride for me that I've been able to give you a foundation for that work going forward. So with that, I would say I deliberately put the improvements for governance first, because I think your work for the health and the future of the library is critically important. And before I comment on each of the 6, let me say this. It is very much the case today, especially in the nonprofit world, that boards have to stop and ask the questions that are embedded in these recommendations. Do we have a clear understanding of the roles and responsibilities? Do we have each person on the board fully understanding the work of the board and their role in the success of the board? So the very first thing that I've recommended here is that you put together a means for board development. And I probably would have said that anyway, because you have fairly new board members. A couple people responded to the survey saying they could answer these questions, but not others because they're still new in the process. I think the work that was done to create the June 2019 resolution was important work, but I also believe going forward, it's going to help if you somehow can create a more succinct statement of what's embodied in that document. I heard a number of times the importance of more informal opportunities so that individuals could get to know one another. And I know that you're doing the best in this COVID-19 experience, but there really is a strong need and desire for people to socialize. And this is true for the governing board of the library and the foundation board as well. I heard as much from foundation board members about a desire for more informal interaction as I heard from governing board members. I also think that there were just a couple of people who addressed the need for some system of collecting the relevant data and information and having that available for the decisions that you make so that you have confidence that you are making the most effective decisions. But this has become a really important practice for governing boards, so I included that as well. And I had the opportunity to review the bylaws proposed amendments document, and I think everything that's suggested in there is worthy of your consideration, and particularly to move from a budget committee to one that is really defined to focus on finance and audit. And the last piece here is to recognize that that's also aligning with best practice as recommended by the National Council of Nonprofits. And then it did seem to me that if you haven't done an audit of the committee structure, that would just line up with the other things that I was suggesting. So I added that piece as number 6. So let me just pause before I go on and ask, as I've gone through this, and you can reflect on your own reading of this, are there questions that you might have now? This is the piece that I really think you want to take advantage of the time with me to address.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so part of my hesitancy to say anything in the beginning when you did it is because I thought about the fact that we're all on Zoom. We have many new board members that came when we were on Zoom, and we lose a lot being on Zoom. When we meet in the boardroom, we're always chatting about what we're doing, talk about social things, we talk about issues. We might have difference of opinions that we share with certain people that we will talk about. And so when you talk about getting together socially or whatnot, I don't know how we would do it during this COVID piece. And that's why I find this a very daunting challenge, because we're not getting together. We're not meeting in committees. We're sick of Zoom. Actually, I am. I don't know about anybody else. I'm still working full time and I'm so sick of Zoom. I can't begin to tell you. We teach on Zoom. I teach classes. I'm in classes. So that's why I find this, I don't find any fault with the report or anything like that. I'm just thinking, how do we go about, putting these pieces together? And as Will said, it's not something we're going to do overnight. And I don't think COVID's going to last forever either. But in the meantime, how do we get started with everybody, in Zoom meetings and everything? I think it's been a very artificial atmosphere to be working on the board through Zoom. We used to have summer retreats where we spend the day with both the board and the foundation members in a social context. We did for the love of the library in a library. We didn't do it virtual. We did it in person, and we got to see each other socially. We don't get to do that anymore. So that's a big barrier in accomplishing things. So that's my 2 cents worth about this so far.
And for me, what I think that is going to mean is you, as you are meeting and discussing how to move forward with any of these, you're going to be making those decisions based on what is it that's reasonable for you to attempt, as long as we're in these circumstances. And we don't know how long it's going to be. I have a position with the government here in Connecticut as the interim state librarian, and it's put me in a place where I get information about what the governor here thinks is going to be our time frame. I can't wait to see what he will say a couple weeks from now that we have a new administration and they're pulling together very quickly a process to help us through this. But what I was hearing before the change in administration was probably not until next fall. And I've had Zoom fatigue before the term came up. It's just too much. But as human beings, I think one of the things that really delights me is when people come together and they appreciate and respect one another, and that is true in this setting, we find a way to do what it is that we can do. And that's what you've been doing in these circumstances anyway. It's remarkable what has happened in our libraries in these circumstances. So for these groups to come together and figure out from these, given our circumstances, what is it that we can do?
And Maureen, I just want to say one more thing. I think you did an excellent job. I think you covered such a plethora of things and items that we really need to work on. So there's no doubt about the fact that you poured your heart into this report and that you extracted the kernels that we need to work on. So I want to make sure you understand that being daunted is not by the substance of your report, but how to go about getting started with it, I guess.
And I'm so glad you made that point, because you reminded me of something I haven't yet said. And that is to tell all of you that one of the things that is going to come as you begin to work under Will's leadership is you're going to tell one another some of what you've told me. And all of the specifics that I was told, I've kept confidential. I called it a confidential inquiry. But as you begin to engage with one another, you are going to see the capacity that resides within you as a group. Every person who responded had substantive things to say. Even the couple people who said, I can't answer the full questionnaire. So are there any thoughts in response to what Ms. Miller and I were just engaged in a discussion about? So I'll move along. So the set of recommendations next is directed at how to strengthen the organization and the library administration. And in my report, I highlighted in bold the essence of each of those recommendations. So the first one is there really is an interest, particularly among the members of the Strategic Planning Working Group who responded and the library leadership team in taking a look at this question. If we didn't have this library organization defined the way it is today, and we were going to create what would really support our work, what might that look like? So I've tried to capture that process in the first recommendation. The library at some point in the past did some work with an organizational change model called the Learning Organization, and I added to my report the briefest description of what this is about. But it is essentially an approach to change where you get people who are working in the organization engaged in thinking about what it is that they want the organization to become. And the disciplines of this really touch on the key areas that need to be addressed. There were a number of voices really calling for continuing implementing the strategy, but to consider having a small group that would actually take the lead in reviewing the progress of that work. And this is also where I captured the suggestion that was coming from several people about the importance of fostering trust and really expecting the managers to model behaviors that will engender trust in the relationship. And I also was so pleased that I could write about the importance of doing some team development with this new executive leadership team. I now have gotten to know each of the persons on that team, including the two newest individuals. And I'm, as an outside person now living in Connecticut, I'm really excited about how this group is going to grow and develop. And as as we go along here, there's strong interest in supporting diversification further of the staff and to set up a means to do this. And there are people in the organization who are very seriously concerned about the recruitment and retention of Black, Indigenous people of color. The new term that's being used is BIPOC, and I put it here in the report. I also think when you can pull the resources together and the capacity is there, it would be important to do an across the board classification and compensation study. And this particularly would flow from looking at how the organizational structure and the work assignments might change. There were a couple people, and this was more internal to the staff, who talked about the importance of understanding how decisions were being made. And they made a compelling case, so I put in a recommendation here and tied it to the importance of communication. And one of the things that tends to be the case in a lot of libraries today is many staff do not understand how the organization works. And when the leadership of the organization can clarify how decisions are made and how communication best occurs, that is when there is reciprocal responsibility for it, it really helps move things forward. And the staff association work is underway. Skip made it possible for me to review some of the work that's been done in the proposed bylaws. So I ended up, as you can see here, suggesting that it would be really helpful to create a charter that would clarify the role of the staff association. And then in number 11, there is a series of positions, and all 4 of these recommendations come from comments made by several people. And it seemed to me that it was important for me to capture this in the report. Although having done human resource management myself in a library setting, I know that often it's really a challenge to be able to acquire the funding for new positions. But I thought it was important for me to put this in here so that you have this as a foundation. And I deliberately skipped over number 6 because I wanted to address that last. Change is difficult for most of us. And of course, it depends upon the nature of the change. But I do think one of the things that is a result of the whole experience with COVID and the telework and the shutting down of our facilities is a really shining the spotlight on the importance of helping people be more resilient. So I think some sort of a program that would address the challenges of change would be helpful. So that was a quick run through on 11 different ones. And one way to think about those 11, they're really defining a way to move forward with organizational improvement.
Are there any questions or any comments about that initially? Hearing none, that can continue to sink in, and then why won't you briefly go over the foundation, Ms. Sullivan, and then we can.
So the foundation members, and I did some interviews with these folks because, like Ms. Anderson, they were swamped and not able to fill out the questionnaire by my deadline. But it was really delightful to listen to them describe how important their work in fulfilling their mission to get additional funding for the library is. No question that they really understand what their work is. But the first thing, several of them called for, there needs to be a short, meaningful story that they can describe as they are out trying to raise funds for the library. There was one individual who made quite a case for learning more about tax planning opportunities. And it was so compelling, I thought, even though it was just coming from one person, it was going to be important to include it in my recommendations. There also is some interest, and now that you have Ms. Sparrow on board, I think it will be fairly easy and straightforward to clarify the role of the foundation board, the relationship with the CEO, and the relationship with her in that new role. And everyone was careful to say it's a relationship that works well, but the codification of the roles would be really helpful. They're interested in establishing their own web presence. And now that you have Ms. Sparrow on board, I think this is an area where you probably want to have some careful conversation with her about what makes sense in my recommendation. And because she is the professional now, or a professional now, really coming in to lead that work. There's a real interest in promoting the foundation so more people in the county understand that this is a place where money can be contributed to really strengthen the library. And there was strong interest in having a closer working relationship with the Library Board of Trustees. And one suggestion was perhaps there could be programs on topics of mutual interest that would bring you together. And developing an organized approach to communication would really help facilitate the development of those relationships. So, questions, discussion on any of that?
And that's fine if there isn't none at the moment. And as Ms. Sullivan has offered, if there's any questions, we can make sure that we pass them along to her and she can clarify it. And like I committed, this is just step one of an ongoing conversation. We're going to take this piece by piece, step by step, and we're going to put some structure around this so it's not overwhelming, so that we can really synthesize and really streamline it. So we can take something so massive. Yes, Ms. Ellis?
This is Mrs. Ellis again.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I tried to come in a couple of times, but I want to unmute because I'm on the phone. One of the things I found helpful, and I don't know if it's appropriate in this setting, with building relationships. Sometimes when we're in a big group, and I noticed this with my students and other groups that I've been a facilitator, it's more intimidating. I'll just use that word. I'm not saying that's how people feel, but I'm using that word for purposes of this comment, to comment in a bigger group. And sometimes when we put people in breakout rooms where there's 2 to 3 to 4 people, sometimes those barriers that were spoken about can be broken down, especially since we're currently in this situation. I don't know if that is appropriate because we need to make sure our meetings are public, and I'm not sure how that would work. But I have found that to be one of the things that can break down, because I agree with the comments, we're not in person, those natural things that we would do and say to each other, that's not there in this setting. And I think that helps us break down this work that we need to do. So I'm putting it out there, not that I want that, but just to put in the back of our minds is, can we use the tool of Zoom to kind of break down the barriers until we're able to meet in person again, when it's safe again. Thank you.
So will we offer a brief comment on that?
Yes, please.
I did some work with the board of directors at the Pratt Library in Baltimore in November, and they used breakout groups for that meeting, and it was a Zoom process, and it worked quite well. Because the way that works is you are sent into rooms, you have the in-depth conversation, and then there also now are devices that you can take notes, and then those notes can be shared with everyone. So I think you're onto something that can be explored further.
Thank you for that idea, Ms. Ellis, and thank you for presenting your recommendations, Ms. Sullivan. And like I was saying, I know we will be in contact with you if we have any follow-up questions. But just know that for us as a group, we will work collaboratively to really work to implement those to make sure that the quality is there. So I'm not going to hold you guys too much longer. I really appreciate you guys really engaging and really holding on. I know it's a lot for the first meeting of 2021 to really have this all thrown at you. I promise you, not all meetings will be like this. And with that, I will challenge you guys to read the recommendations, think it over, and let's be prepared to have another conversation at next month's meeting over the course of the following month's meetings as well. Does anyone have anything else for the good of the order? Skip?
Hey, Will, I just want to say that for that second section of recommendations dealing with administration and management of the library, I will begin having in-depth conversations with our executive leadership team. And we also will reach out to people who were part of the strategic planning staff working group, 30 members of whom responded to Ms. Sullivan's request for information. So we'll engage staff, not just at the executive level, but across the organization to review these recommendations and decide the direction to go. We'll start with our executive team and then we'll go from there.
All right. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Beck?
Second.
Hearing no objection, you guys are free. Thank you guys very much.
Before Penny Evans goes, Penny, can you stay on a second? I want to get your phone number because I think we've got the wrong phone number. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.